Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I know that yesterday you heard the phone ring at the end of my 5 good minutes. It was the bell saying you've gone too long. That's what it was. I'm still cold, and we're still in the book of First Timothy. First Timothy we are studying because we have begun a series entitled Neglected Books of the New Testament, and Timothy is certainly one of those books that we tack on to the end of a study of First and Second Timothy, and so that's why I want to take some time to study the book of Titus. So, yesterday we were talking about how important it was for Titus to establish elders in every church, and we talked about just the role of elders in that church, which is made clear in these congregations, which is made clear in verses 5 through 9 of chapter 1. Today, we're going to read verses 10 through 16 and finish chapter 1, and we're going to begin to find out why it's so important for these guys to have good elderships in all their congregations. This section is a section that I like to call Tell Us How You Really Feel. Because the Apostle Paul is about as firm in his conviction that these people are difficult as he is anywhere else in any of his writing. I mean, the only other time he gets worked up in any way like this is in 2 Corinthians and certainly in the book of Galatians, where he's maybe even a little more worked up. But this passage will make some of us uncomfortable because it involves what we might consider name calling. But I'll have some things to say about that after we finish these verses. Okay, he's talking about the people who live on the island of Crete. Verse 10, for there are many rebellious men, empty talkers, and deceivers, especially those who are of the circumcision, who must be silenced because they are upsetting the whole families, teaching things they should not teach for the sake of sordid gain. One of themselves, a prophet of their own, said, Cretans are always liars, evil beasts, lazy gluttons. This testimony is true. For this cause reprove them severely, that they may be sound in the faith, not paying attention to Jewish myths and commandments of men who turn away from the truth. To the pure, all things are pure, but to those who are defiled and unbelieving, nothing is pure, but both their mind and their conscience are defiled. They profess to know God, but by their deeds they deny him, being detestable, disobedient, worthless for any good deed. Okay, let me just say a few things. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus called not an individual person, but a category of person, a fool. We should not use words lightly, and we should always give an answer with reverence and gentleness. I mean, that's the scriptures. That's 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 14 to 15. I also want to, but it's also true that one must speak the truth. And Paul doesn't call them liars, evil beasts, and gluttons. He quotes one of their own writers, Epimenides, who was writing in the 6th century BC. Tells you something about the breadth of Paul's education that he can pull that quote out of the air from a guy who'd written 600 years before. How many medieval writers can you quote? Or Renaissance writers? Quoting their own. And he says he's right about his own people. And to Paul's credit, Cicero and Polybius, both of whom wrote about the same time, within 100 years of Paul writing, had similar and more severe things to say about people who lived on the island of Crete. This was an island with a good economy that was multicultural because it had very good ports, and its people had a reputation for moral laxity. This is in Roman times. They had this reputation for moral laxity and for high living and for not working very hard. And he says that's exactly the people you're going to be working with. You need to know this ahead of time because these people need real sanctifying by the Holy Spirit, and this is going to be hard work, and you should know this ahead of time. He also mentions in this passage the presence of the Jews and the influence of the Jews on this island, which was enormous. And he also lets us know how to tell the sheep from the goats, how to tell a wolf in sheep's clothing when one arrives, you know. And he'll go on and be more clear about the false teaching itself in the next few verses. But today, he's talking to Titus about the general attitude of the people among whom he is working. And he just says they've been jaded. To the pure, all things are pure, but to those who are defiled, nothing is pure. And these people, you know, they have grown up in a culture that is thoroughly jaded. These are the people that you're working with. Paul describes the Corinthians in these terms in 1 Corinthians chapter 6. You know, another port town that had that reputation. And so there's a lot of work for Timothy to do, a lot of work for the Holy Spirit to do among these Christians. And Paul's just being honest about that. Okay, thank you for joining me. We'll pick up with chapter 2 tomorrow.